Hi folks, welcome to our last episode of Methanol Madness this season, brought to us by Daltons Landscape Supplies. Of course, if you've been out of the track, it's the conclusion of Speed Week on Saturday night. Of course, we had 4 days of racing over 8 nights. Plenty of challenges, AJ, but the racing was pretty good.
Lots of challenges, but boy, how good, like the Speed Week. And the weatherman actually did us a bit of a favour on Saturday night, I think, because Sunday's show was just outstanding. It's hard to fault. Did we get everything right? No. Did we get nearly everything right? Hell yeah, it was brilliant.
Yeah, the last event being postponed until Sunday, which gave us a really good look into Sunday racing at Ruapuna Speedway, and it worked out rather well, I must say. Louise, welcome to the show. You had a very busy week. We had the front end challenge, we had all the events going on, and lots of interviews on the infield as well.
Yeah, really great to see the support from so many tracks and drivers from all over the country, and everyone turning up for a bit of a social gathering at the front end challenge was always a fun addition as well.
Yeah, it's really cemented itself as a big week of racing, and of course this was the inaugural running of Speed Week. By and large, all the feedback is pretty positive. A couple of the old boys in Speedway didn't quite like a few things, but the crowd certainly enjoyed everything that was going on, and the feedback has been enormous. The Facebook page is certainly full of plenty of positive comments. Josh Henderson, you were doing the commentary during Speed Week. A few highlights for you, including that modified sprint track record.
Yeah, absolutely. Of course, Liam Assel setting the new modified sprint track record, which is a lap set faster than some of the sprint cars. So Speed Week offering up some of the biggest races, of course, and some of the biggest challenges to the drivers. It was great. Yeah,
certainly a big week that we'll all remember, and a great way to finish the Speedway season. Well, to get the show started, of course, it's our crash of the week. This is brought to us by Elite Re-Roofing. And an interesting one here, AJ. Logan Scammell wins his first TQ race of the season, and just after he goes past the line, he rides a wheel.
He was certainly carrying some pace, wasn't he? And clipped the wheel of Jason Graham. Up and over she went. He had certainly not slowed down any from the minute that he went across that checkered flag line. And he was back the next day. But look at that. Yeah, hard contact too.
Yeah, a bittersweet moment for Logan. He's just 16 or 17 years old. He's been racing for a couple of seasons now, and it was a wonderful moment to see him actually take out that race. But of course, the sour part of that was he destroyed his car. But as you said, he got some help by plenty of the pit guys and had that car up and running the very next day. So a good result for Logan Scammell. Well, time to move on to the Herrick Creek Distillery review. And of course, the first meeting we'll look at is the Friday night meeting. And 5 classes racing here. The first one we'll look at is the modified sprints. Not too much racing for them. It was Harry McIntyre and Brett Booth taking out a couple of heat races there. No feature for them. We just had some time delays at the meeting. And the next class we'll look at, Louise, was the quarter midgets.
Yeah, a pretty large field of quarter midgets. Obviously, they were looking forward to getting their foot on the big stage with so many drivers there that they all idolise. It was Jackson Clark picking up another feature win this season, Colin Thompson finishing in second, and Brooke Clark in third.
Yeah, pretty good racing by the quarter midgets, as you say, just a support class. The next class we'll look at is one of the feature classes. It was the BT Race for Mates for TQs, and Louise, you're pretty good with these results. It was the North Islander Nathan Bruff.
Yeah, very cool to see Nathan taking this one out. The format's pretty unique with the drivers picking who they start next to, and Nathan was up in the first few rows but really had to race for that one with Dana Lowry leading for most of the race. She ultimately finished up in second, and Scott McIntosh ended up third after some relegations. So very good racing throughout the TQ class the entire night, and cool to see the North Islanders come down, and Nathan was very, very happy to pick up his first feature win.
Yeah, certainly in victory lane there, enjoying every moment, and the racing, as you say, was pretty intense with that reverse grid draw. The next class we'll move on to is the midgets, and of course, AJ, this was the BT Race for Mates midgets, and some pretty good results here.
Yeah, really good results right across the board, and I think one of the things that stood out was again that the South Islanders are very capable, or there's a number of them very capable of getting right up there and amongst it, and putting on one heck of a show. Really, really impressed with Ben Morgan. I thought Ben's showing some real consistency. Jack Lowe, you get out of Jack Lowe what you expect out of him, and that's all fire and brimstone. So both those two guys were really on form.
Yeah, I think there was a lot of highlights in the mid-pack, actually. The results won't point out how good some of these drivers were. The actual result was Alec Insley, the young 17-year-old from Auckland, taking out the BT Race for Mates. He beat home Brad Mosen and the very fast finishing Aaron Hodgson. So some pretty good racing with the BT for Mates. I think Amy and the guys that promote that event will be pretty pleased with how that came out.
They will be, and it has found a bit of a spiritual home at Christchurch as well, hasn't it? You know, the club puts a lot of effort in. They support Amy Worthington and the team that put it together, and of course the late great Bryce Townsend had a real affinity with Ruapuna and the people, and he encouraged drivers back in his day to come down here and support it. So it's a win-win-win right across the board, and we just love it.
Of course, the big feature event was the Avon Insurance Grand Prix, or Sprint Car Grand Prix. This was running over 2 nights, and of course it was mostly heats on Friday night. Jonathan Allard, Max Guilford, Zach Zokol, Jamie Duff, Joel Myers Jr. and Paul Donovan taking out a heat race. So that was certainly mixed across the board there, AJ.
It was. One of the real highlights to me was Jamie McDonald. He was like 4th equal in the points after the first night's racing, and the guy is very obviously being hindered by that back issue that he's got that ultimately saw him step out of the car before Speed Week was over. But there was plenty of bark left in that old dog, and I think that J-Mac really was geared up to sort of finish on a bit of a high, and he was heading that way too.
And Josh, what did you make of the sprint car racing on that Friday night?
Yeah, the Friday night provided some really good sprint car racing. Of course, as you mentioned, Zach Sokol taking out a heat, so it was good for him as a young man just coming down here for his first couple of times running that sprint car. He put on a pretty good performance all weekend long, of course, having to step away with a bit of pneumonia over the last few nights, but he put on some really good performances over that Friday night.
Yeah, it was an interesting time for Zach Sokol. As you say, took out that heat race and some developments which we'll talk about a little later in the week, which we'll reveal. Well, we move on to Saturday's meeting. Of course, this is the finale of the Avon Insurance Sprint Car Grand Prix. And Louise, it was Jonathan Allard taking it out, but the racing was pretty good in behind as well, wasn't it?
Yeah, I think that Max Guilford driving from last to third in that Grand Prix feature is probably a great nomination for Race of the Year, especially at Ruapuna. I think the way that was driven, all the way up to third, I think that a yellow could have really changed that. He certainly showed great speed, and there was a lot of passing going on throughout the field. But the race between Jonathan and Joel was certainly very interesting as well. It was kind of one of those ones where you didn't really know where to watch.
Yeah, 2 American drivers putting on a big performance, and of course it was ultimately Jonathan Allard taking the Sprint Car Grand Prix from Joel Myers Jr. and that very good performance of Max Guilford. Well, the next event we cover here is the Hang Up Entertainment King of the South Midget Eliminator. Louise, you must have been happy with how this format played out. There was some anxiety in the pits initially. Some of the older, more established drivers or car owners were a little critical of it, but this turned out to be one of the best races of the week for sure.
Yeah, there was a little bit of uncertainty about how many cars they really would be able to pass in 5 laps. Obviously, those guys at the back, they're really having to make the most of the 5 laps to get past. If you were at the back, you had 5 cars that you needed to pass before you kind of run into that elimination. But super lucky there weren't very many cautions, that we didn't lose many cars due to like a DNF or an incident or anything like that. They certainly raced their way through the field, and guys like Michael Pickens and Brad Mosen had no issues at all doing that and making their way up into those podium positions and into that top 5. But there was a lot of really good performances there as well by guys like Nathan Wilkie, Trent Way also finishing on the podium, and then obviously Ben Matthews taking it out for his first A-grade midget feature win. So very happy results all around.
Yeah, and just to cement how good that format really was, the guys that were at the very back of the field made their way up to 2nd, 4th and 6th, I think it was, and the likes of Hodgson, Mosen and Pickens getting very close, and it was Ben Matthews, AJ, taking this out. That was a pretty exciting time for Ben.
It was, they're sort of one of the smaller teams among the Auckland contingent, and they laid it all on the plate, didn't they? And the celebrations, that's the sort of thing that you really love seeing, a guy that has loved a victory, and just big ups to them, because Ben absolutely had to pin his ears back and go for it.
Yeah, great result for Ben's team for sure. Josh, the TQs were racing as a support club in a class I should say, and it was 56k. Regan Tyler showing us a clean pair of heels.
Yeah, of course, Regan Tyler has been one of the stellar TQ drivers from up north. He's put on some real good performances, and especially down at Ellesmere as well, put on some good performances down there. He put on a good feature race there for the TQs, of course, and he won the BT Racemates a year ago, so Regan Tyler, of course, one to watch out for when he comes down here.
The official results there: Regan Tyler first, Jaden Corkle from Nelson, and our very own Ricky Brett showing some pretty good form for second and third. Well, the mod sprints were also a support class, and it was the night of Liam Astle. Josh, tell us how this all played out. It was certainly exciting watching him race on that evening.
Yeah, Liam Astle, of course, just transitioning. The little bit of car swapping going on in the modified sprints garage. Of course, Gus Dawson's car blowing up spectacularly that night. That was the ex-Liam Astle car, and Astle's gone and taken Craig Cox's car, in which he's put some absolutely phenomenal performances on, setting a new track record for the modified sprints of 13.854, which was a superbly fast time of the night. And in terms of feature performances, that was the fastest lap of any feature that night, faster than even Jonathan Allard's 13.881. Fastest lap in the sprint cars.
Yeah, quite astounding actually, and Liam Astle almost surprised himself. I spoke to him after the meeting. He said he never lifted. The car had perfect setup, and all he was doing was holding on for the ride. So certainly a very impressive lap record, breaking it by 0.4 of a second. This lap record had been there for 12, 14 years. I think it was Tom Lumsden that held that record for a long, long time. But to smash it by 0.4 of a second, absolutely outstanding. And AJ, I think modified sprint racing has gone to another level now.
It has, and that's part of the shift of youth into the class and the numbers.
Yep.
It is very competitive. It's a bit like the wingless sprints. They've been good support classes, but they can actually put some really good standalone performances up with that infusion of the young guys. Some of the older guys sort of getting out of it or moving on to something else, and car numbers excellent, and the support. Don't forget the support from Jaden Fraser, for so much of the season, making that trip up from Invercargill. It does him the world of good, and it does our guys the world of good. And then you got young Gus Dawson coming from the other end of the country, and getting his wings, so to speak, with the modified sprints.
Yeah, you certainly got to have a fast car these days. You've got to be brave, and generally you've got to be fairly young to race these things, that's for sure. Well, it was time to move on to our Thursday meeting. And AJ, we hadn't run a Thursday meeting for a long time, but we seemed to get a reasonable crowd there, and the racing was pretty good. The
racing was pretty good, and one of the things that stood out to me was the fact that the first two nights of the sprint car action was pretty scrappy. There was some performances there that guys may reflect on as perhaps not being quite what was required, but everyone had settled down by the Thursday night gig, and again, hard, fast action going on, and again, some of our local guys showed that they're not out of place in such big company.
Yeah, exactly. And the modified sprints were racing. They were just a support class. It was the Liam Astle show. He took out both heats there. And we might move on to the Ruapuna Rumble. This is for the V6 wingless sprints. This was sponsored by Smith Racing. Of course, Paul Smith coming down, racing his own car here. And it was a North Island domination. Josh, it appears that Laurie Peterson, Luke McClymont and Billy Griffiths dominated all the heat races.
Yep, absolutely. Of course, except for one, which was taken out by Kirk Hawkins. Luke McClymont, really the stellar class of the field in those heat races, won two or three heat races, and the other ones he finished second and third. So putting on some really good performances, and of course Billy Griffiths, the other one coming up all the way from Rotorua. He first time at Ruapuna for him, and he was outstanding with the results for him. 2 heat race wins for him as well, and a couple of unfortunate errors within those other 2 heat races that he was in, and dropped him a little bit further down the order. But nonetheless, he was pretty happy with his results and the interviews that we did in the infield as well. So he seemed very happy.
Yeah, good stuff, Billy. First time to Ruapuna and taking out 2 heat races, a pretty good effort by you. Well, the next class we'll have a look at is the Gold Cup for midgets. AJ, this was the first time we were running the City South Van Spears Gold Cup, and some pretty good results.
Yeah, there was, and again, the cream did rise to the top eventually, but Michael Pickens, Brad Mosen, Alec Insley, they really had to work for their money, didn't they? Jack Lowe, when he got his opportunities to run the high line, what a great show that guy puts on.
Yep.
He captures the imagination. Maybe we missed Aaron Hodgson a little.
Yep.
Because he adds so much to it, but in saying that, we've actually been very blessed with those performances from the likes of Mosen, Pickens. Their careers are coming to the end, I suspect, over the next 2 or 3 years, but when you see someone like Alec Insley starting to build, man, what a future.
Yeah, absolutely, and Brad Mosen was very dominant in that heat racing for the Midget Gold Cup. So that moves us on to the sprint cars. Of course, this was the first round of heats for the Salute to Goody and the Sprint Car Gold Cup. And Stephen Taylor started off pretty well here, AJ. Took out the first heat, but didn't go so well in the rest of the weekend. Disappointed by his high standards.
Yeah, Stephen himself, he's sort of a little bit disappointed, a little bit flat after the whole affair. He threw everything at it. And, it is well worth saying that Brad Mosen was a revelation in sprint cars.
Oh, yeah.
And so, if his midget days are perhaps sort of coming to a little bit of an end, I think there's a career for him in sprint cars. He is one of those guys. There was like 3 of them that decided to go to the top side of the racetrack, and no surprise that 2 of them were midget car drivers and Max Guilford. And just what a show they put on. Mosen just did not put a foot wrong.
No, you're absolutely right. And just looking at the results here, Michael Pickens, Jonathan Allard, Dave Kerr, that was a popular win for the Springston crowd. And just thinking about Jacob McIntyre qualifying 6th for the Sprint Car Gold Cup. What a great result that was for him.
Brilliant. And Jacob is pretty much the only guy from down south that this year has supported Ruapuna. He's put in the big miles and so on, but they want to improve, and that's what him and his dad have said. If we want to go fast, we've got to get in amongst company like this. We're not going to sort of achieve so much staying local. And that was a brilliant result for him. I'm super stoked for them. He's another guy, leaves nothing on the plate. He's going to tell you if you've cut him off.
Yeah.
And great result for them.
Yeah, he's certainly one that performs on the track. He did have a crash out on the last day of the Sprint Car Gold Cup, but a pretty good performance by you there, Jacob. So we took a breather there, AJ, didn't we? And we went on to the Front End Challenge, which was happening at the Racecourse Hotel on Friday. In actual fact, Louise, I'll get you to talk about this. That proved to be quite popular, and lots of people attended.
Yeah, everyone likes a good excuse, I think, to get together and to put on an event like that. I think it was really cool. And we had the Team CRC, Michael Pickens' team, competing, which was really cool to see them getting involved, as well as obviously the defending champs, the Duffs, as well. So there was lots of great competition throughout those guys.
It was, and we had a stellar finish to this, AJ. There was a 1/100th of a second between the 2 teams that made it to the final. So Team CRC Pickens actually took this out, 2 minutes 7.34 seconds, and Team Duff were beaten by 1/100th of a second with a time of 2:07.35. We said on the live stream it seemed like a bit of a jack-up, but it was actually legit.
It was legit, and when Mike Glover, the referee and timekeeper, showed me the stopwatch, it's sort of, holy cow, look at this. I think the Front End Challenge is a necessary part of something like a Speed Week. You've got to give the teams the opportunity just to kick back a little. They're on holiday apart from being at the racetrack, and they've got to have a reason to get together. And there was a lot of race fans there that were catching up on it and so on. And I suspect that it can get way bigger and way better. There's a few ideas already floating around, and the guys, they got right into it, and some of the needling that was going on, thankfully away from the camera, was quite hilarious.
Well, looking at the success of the front end challenge from a social point of view, I think Ruapuna may have to look at a bigger venue, to be quite honest. There would have been probably close to 100 people from Speedway there in a fairly congested area, very difficult to see at times, but the live stream helped people that were at the pub, of course. But certainly that's got some momentum over the last several years, and a big thank you to Steve Duff for organising that. That was part of the R&R Duff Sprint Car Gold Cup, and just another part that Concut and Steve have put together for Ruapuna Speedway. Well, time to move on to our last event of Speed Week, and of course this was programmed to go on Saturday night, but AJ, the weather got the best of us.
The weather got the best of us, and it's sort of been hanging around out there all day long, and you know, I bet everyone was looking at the rain radar and so on, but once you get that misty, drizzly stuff and with not a whole bunch of wind, you know, you're sunk. There was actually no decision to be made.
Yeah.
You know, the decision was made for us, but how good was a Sunday afternoon at the Speedway?
Yeah, there's a real temptation to try and get the meeting done on Saturday. The pressure was that most of the drivers had to go back to Auckland or up north at least. And once we made that decision, quite a few of the drivers at their own expense decided to stay on and chance running it on Sunday. And what a great result it was. It was Sunday afternoon racing at Ruapuna Speedway. We haven't seen that for a long, long time. And the weather played its part and the crowd turned up. It was a fantastic day of racing, and there was plenty of classes running. Well, Louise, we had the quarter midgets as a support class. How did they go?
Yeah, the final night for the quarter midgets of the season, and it was Jack Brownlee's returning back to Victory Lane. It's been a couple of meetings since we've had Jack in Victory Lane, obviously with Jackson picking up a couple of feature wins there, but the track was pretty dicey for the little quarter midgets, and Darcy Rasmussen able to hang on for second. He actually got quite close to Jack at some stages, but Jackson Clark, the track got the better of him a couple of times, and it was looking like he could have gone for a big one, but lucky to hang on and finish in third. But it was a heartbreak for Brooke Clark starting off the front row, and her last quarter midget had been at Ruapuna Speedway. Unfortunately, mechanical failures put her on the infield before the first lap was even complete. So pretty gutting for the Clarks, but Jackson was pretty stoked and gave her a special shout out on the podium, so that was always sweet.
Yeah, two things happening there. Of course, disappointment for Brooke, as you just mentioned, but Jackson really starting to earn his stripes now in the quarter midgets. He's won a feature race, he's getting on the podiums regularly, but you couldn't take it away from Jack Brownlee's a great result for him. Josh, the TQs were racing on Saturday as well, and they put on some pretty good racing also.
Yeah, of course, and Ricky Brett, our ex-New Zealand TQ champion, took out the TQ's feature race on the Saturday, and he was closely followed by Tyler Warnock and then Jeremy Webb running Royden Crawford's car. Those three really were the class of the weekend, all weekend long for the TQs, and especially on those first two heat races, really between Ricky Brett and Tyler Warnock.
Yeah, Louise, Ricky Brett explained to us all that they've finally come to grips with that car of his, and of course we always expect Ricky Brett to be up the front there. He's an ex-New Zealand champion, but he was pretty pleased to take that feature race out.
Yeah, the Brett Racing team have certainly had a pretty rough season. He had a couple of crashes, he's had to miss a couple of meetings even, but him and his son Lockie have been working really hard, and they've got the car to where, you know, the speed that they've had is kind of finally showing through with some consistent results, and cool to see Ricky picking up his second feature win of the season.
Well, we move on to the Ruapuna Rumble. This, of course, was the V6 wingless sprints conclusion to their big race meeting. And the Auckland juggernaut of Luke McClymont, he wasn't challenged, AJ, and put on a blistering performance.
Yeah, he is an absolute class act in the wingless sprints. And I think, again, you know, the Ruapuna Rumble gives this class a real opportunity to showcase themselves, not only down here in the South Island, but everyone is looking. And you know, A, what a spectacle the four-wide salute was. B, how good was it having, you know, close on 30 drivers there. And then you look at how competitive it was. And if you take Luke McClymont out of it, because he was just so dominant, you know, it was just so close. And, you know, our local guys, they absolutely did not disgrace themselves one bit. You know, Kane, Jemmett, Bailey, Clive, good old Mark Morris, you know, out there doing his thing, Shooter Hawkins until he had one big crash. And he's got a bit of a road to recover from, but, you know, he's doing fine. And, I was really impressed with the spectacle that class provided. And, you know, there are moves sort of for it to be changed a little. Maybe change will be needed one day, but yeah, leave it how it is right now, I think, because it was very enjoyable to watch.
Yeah, it certainly was, and it's grown over the last several years, and Luke McClymont's taken it out 3 out of the last 4 years, I believe it is. So with any luck, we'll see Luke McClymont back down next year. Of course, he had that midget car drive this year. Not sure what he's going to be doing next year, but certainly the V6 wingless sprint he's very dominant at. Well, look, folks, time to take a break, and on the back of that, we'll catch up with the midget and sprint car action.
This ain't your fancy store-bought stuff. This is Herrick Creek moonshine, handcrafted right here in New Zealand. Made with real corn by real people and a whole lot of heart. It's smooth, it's strong, it's real. Experience New Zealand in a jar with Herrick Creek moonshine.
Welcome to Wellington's largest caravan and RV shop. CB Caravans and RV Centre look after repairs and maintenance, and they are leak specialists. CB Caravans and RV Centre import UK caravans. Need to sell? They can help. CB Caravans and RV Centre, your caravan solution. Catch up with Will and Wendy today.
And always good to have Wendy and Will from CB Caravans and RV Centre as part of Methanol Madness. Well, time to move on to Saturday night's review of the midget car racing. And of course, it was the City South Van Spears Gold Cup. This was the inaugural running of that event. And Louise, a pretty good performance by the youngster Alec Insley.
Yeah, really cool to see the Insley team making their way down and attending all of the meetings of Speed Week, which was a great addition to the class. Alec has been pretty successful up in the North Island, picking up plenty of podiums along the way and really showing some improvement from his rookie season, and definitely cool to see them picking up another win.
Well, second in that event was Jack Lowe, and that was a pretty good performance there, AJ. I know that Jack had nothing to offer the Insley car, but he drove pretty well to hold out the very fast finishing Jeremy Webb.
He did, and that was actually a good battle looming between the two South Island guys, because Alec had pretty much packed his bag and gone. But one performance over the Speed Week that I think we've got to mention was Mitchell Hill, driving the Lumsden XB4, and you know that was a very late deal. And I've always had the suspicion that Mitch has got more ability than he's been able to actually show, and he was very good. And how good was it seeing Ben Smith out there as well? You know, so all is looking pretty good in the South Island midget contingent. A couple of 3 more cars would be really good, but what it did show was that we got some guys very capable of mixing it up and getting stuck into these North Islanders and sending them home saying, you know what, there's actually a bit of competition down here.
Yeah, just looking at Jack Lowe's career, of course, we know he spent a year or a season up in the North Island, and that's really proven to be valuable for him. Didn't see him doing the wide line on Saturday night. They chose to have their setup as a tight setup on the pole line, which was probably ultimately the best place to be, but had nothing to offer that fast Auckland driver of Alec Insley.
No, it wasn't for the lack of trying, and I talked to Jack in between races, and it was just before the feature, and I said about going up to the top side, and he said, you know what, he said, if we have to, we will, but he said, she's a little bit treacherous up there. It sort of had 2 levels to it. You had to go over a little bit of a hump to really sort of try to get any momentum out of it, and he just said, you know, maybe it's worth the risk, maybe it's not. And I suspect that if he was on Alec Insley's bumper, with a lap and a half to go, he may well have dug deep and given it a go with a potential win it or bin it, but I suspect it would have been a bin it.
Well, the official result there, of course, was Alec Insley, Jack Lowe and Jeremy Webb. Well, joining the show is Alec Insley. Welcome to Methanol Madness, Alec. That was a heck of a week for you at Speed Week, mate. You must be very pleased with those 2 feature results that you got.
Yeah, really blew us away, really, with those results. We kind of headed south, you know, hoping for some pretty good shows. Didn't expect to get any wins under our belt. To be fully honest, if you told me before we went down that I would have had a win under my belt, after I went down there, I would have told you I was stupid. But also telling me that I would have had 2 was also pretty unreal.
Well, take us through your first feature win. Of course, that was the BT Race for Mates. Tell us about what you remember about the feature race. From the outside looking in, you looked pretty composed, and you didn't seem to make too many mistakes.
Yeah, well, we didn't quite get the initial jump off the start. Ben Morgan got a pretty good start on us, and we kind of just tucked behind his rear bumper for a couple of laps, and then we had a restart, and I knew I kind of had to prioritize that opportunity and really work forward from there. So I waited for him to make a mistake, and that kind of paid off, and we were able to sneak underneath him going into turn 3, and that's kind of all she wrote.
Well, you certainly had some good results all season, and you must be really enjoying this midget car rise. What is it like fighting week in, week out with the likes of Brad Mosen, Michael Pickens and Aaron Hodgson?
Well, as probably a lot of people know, Brad and Michael are definitely on a different level, but that comes with years of experience. So as I kind of get a few more laps under my belt, and Dad and my crew kind of understand what they need to do with the car, we're kind of creeping up on their door. But there's also drivers like Hodgie and all them who are really good, and some weeks, are unbeatable. So we're definitely just trying to find that little edge, and it's coming along quickly.
Well, you moved on to the Midget Eliminator, the first time ever run at Ruapuna, and a format that's pretty unusual to you guys. What were your thoughts of it? I know the results didn't go that well, but how did you feel approaching that event?
I was definitely a little bit unsure on how the event was all run, but I was definitely keen to give it a go. We got picked by Michael third up, so we were starting quite deep, so I knew my chances were pretty slim to make it through, but I gave it my best crack, and I found myself eliminated, but it was definitely a cool event, and I definitely could see it having some good potential in the future.
Excellent. Well, of course, we move on to the City South Van Spears Midget Gold Cup. Slight controversial start to this one, Alec, but once we got that all sorted out, you drove perfectly for the 30 laps.
Yeah, it was definitely a close call off the start there with me and Brad. I had a chat to Brad, Greenway, and all those guys, so they're all happy about it. They saw it as a racing deal, so we kind of all just brushed it off. But then what happened with Michael kind of confused me a little bit. I thought he might have missed the bottom or something like that, so I thought he was still right behind me the whole race. So I was kind of pushing myself, but I didn't want to push myself too hard where I made a mistake. So I just kind of made sure I hit my marks, and then I came in and got told I was long gone. So that was definitely a big surprise.
Well, tell me, what's it like driving a midget? I mean, you're a young 17 years old, and what's it been like getting yourself involved with the midget car? Have you had any frightening moments? I know you had a big accident here at Ruapuna a season ago.
Yeah, so the class is really fun. There's really good people involved with it, but it's definitely a big learning curve for me and my family. But I had a pretty good wreck down in Palmerston North after my first half season, and that set me back big time going into last season, which was my first full season. But that started going real well, and then we had that incident obviously down south last year at the BT Race Mates, so that sent me back again. But I definitely rebounded quicker from that one, and this season here that we've just had has just been unreal. With kind of blowing our expectations away.
Well, you've done way better than most people would expect. It seems like, AJ, it's almost a young man's game for the midget cars now. Lots of good talent coming through, but I think Alec Insley showed incredible patience just to drive on his marks and almost drive the perfect race.
Great composure, and I'm not too sure whether Uncle Justin has much to do with his career being tied up with the Pickens team and so on, but I did say to Justin on the Friday night, there's a real future for the Insley name in midget car racing, and just so impressed with Alec. But you talk about it being a young man's game, then you start looking at Mitch Fabish and Travis Buckley. I thought Trent Way put up some really good solid performances over the week, and so some of these young guys are really starting to stamp a little bit of strength in the midget car section, and next summer could be a totally different kettle of fish on the New Zealand midget car scene, I suspect. Yeah,
absolutely. A good core of drivers coming through. And Alec, what's your plans for next year, mate?
At the moment, we're just going to stay in the midget. That's obviously if Bill wants to keep us, but I'm pretty sure Bill, Dad, and all of our team get along real well, so I don't think we're going to have any issues there. But definitely back in the midget, and yeah.
Well, Alec, thanks for joining Methanol Madness. Good to get your insights into Speed Week, and certainly had some great results. Well, the last class we'll look at, of course, is the sprint cars, and of course that was the R&R Duff Gold Cup and the Royce Clive Engineering Salute to Goody. This was a combined feature in the end with the postponement on Thursday. Louise, a pretty big battle here between our two Americans.
Yeah, very cool to kind of see the reverse of what happened at the Grand Prix the week before, where it was Allard taking the win over Joel, and this time it went the other way, both showing, you know, their levels of experience. And obviously Jonathan's got a lot of years under his belt racing, and Joel indicated many times, as he has over the years that we've seen him here, that Jonathan is one of the people that he looks up to the most, and to see the respect level that they have for each other while racing, and Jonathan greeting Joel and vice versa in victory lane. And I think the relationship that they have is really special, and there's nothing but respect between the two of them. So it was definitely very cool to kind of witness Joel making his way back up to eliminate that lead there that Jonathan had, and capitalising on that mistake that he made.
Well, it happened to be just one mistake, didn't it? Jonathan was driving perfectly. He was trying to race around the cush there for a while. It got pretty rough at times, but he was navigating and almost carving out his own track up there. And he just made that one mistake. Joel Myers shot through and actually extended his lead after that. And a pretty good performance by the young Californian flyer, AJ.
Yeah, he's a real class act, and we said after Buddy Kofoid was here a number of seasons ago, how lucky we were to have seen such a talent, and Joel Myers has shown me enough to tell me that he is, one of the best coming out of that Californian group right now, and man, there's some real hot dogs in amongst them, and he's so loved by the New Zealand fans, because he's just such a neat kid. And I do understand what you say about that respect that there was between Jonathan Allard and Joel Myers Jr. And it's almost as though Jonathan saying, hey, I've taught this kid a bit, but he's taught me a few things as well now. And Jonathan, he was carving out his own track, and it was a game of inches. It was inches that cost him the R&R Duff Gold Cup.
So official result there, Joel Myers Jr. took it out from Jonathan Allard and Michael Pickens, so pretty good racing for the sprint cars. Well, that concludes the review for Speed Week, and we might just go on to final thoughts now. And Louise, what were your thoughts of Speed Week overall? I certainly, from my point of view, thought it was a great success. A couple of challenges with weather and some of the formatting wasn't exactly right, but by and large we got through it, and the crowd seemed to be very appreciative of what was going on.
Yeah, I think for being our first ever Speed Week, I think that a pat on our back is probably a little bit well deserved. The weather did not play ball at all, but we made the most of it, and that Sunday show actually worked out for the better. So very lucky, and to attract people like Jonathan Allard and Joel Myers Jr., both two Americans, as well as adding Marcus Dumsney to the stage when Zachary Sokal got sick. It was pretty cool to have an Australian come over and hear all three national anthems playing on the Sunday afternoon, during that grand parade. And Marcus obviously had a little bit of a tough hand dealt to him, driving a car he'd never driven before and having to start off the back of all of the races, but hard charger in that feature on Sunday afternoon, going from 20th to 10th, and certainly carving in some good laps. So definitely really cool to kind of see the level of international attraction that it gained, and to get everyone involved from the North Island as well was really cool, and so many positive comments about people that just love coming to our track.
Absolutely, and you're so right about Marcus Dumsney. A tough gig for him to step into the so-called sprint car. What a great moment that was, though. Zach and Aussie providing that car for a ex-New Zealand Australian champion, and he got on a plane and flew over on about 4 hours' notice, and he was racing at Ruapuna. So a lot of that's to do with the people that asked him, but a lot of it's to do with the event. It was a $60,000 paycheck in that sprint car feature race. Of course, the two feature races being combined. AJ, your final thoughts of the whole week?
I think Speed Week is an absolute winner. Maybe a little bit too much, trying to be a little too adventurous with all the support classes and so on. Whether you're going to get rain, whether it's November, December, January, February, March or April. And so that's a reality. The only thing is the cold. And of course there's a few North Islanders the first couple of nights talking about how cold it was. I think a real strength is the relationship that Ruapuna has built in the past with a number of competitors, the Jamie Larsons of this world, Paul Donovan, we see Paul here every 2 or 3 years, and he's a tough old dog. But then it's the relationships that have just started building now with the Sockhold team. Guys like that come down here, and they come because they enjoy it, they come because they want to come down. And I think the real winner, though, was the whole concept of the show. It was a show. It wasn't going and watching a bunch of heat races and a feature. There was always something happening. There was some noise. There was engagement. I'm blown away by how much noise the spectators are making now. Everyone's getting hooked into it. The feature, so the winners, when they have their interviews and that, everyone's engaged in that. The opportunity for the parades, the kids waving, the lolly scrambles, the whole 9 yards. It's just a brilliant show, and a very, very good driver who will remain nameless, who has done many, many laps all around the world, said that there are promoters in the USA and Australia who are watching what Ruapuna's doing. Wow. And if you had told me that was ever a possibility, I would have said that you're probably a head case. Craig Brimwell, you're a head case.
Well, it's certainly growing for sure, and I think what Ruapuna does well is the ceremonial side of things with our Anzac Parade and the 3 national anthems, and having what amounted to 45 cars on the track. The driver engagement was great. They're bringing their children out, their pit crew, there's people driving the cars, and lots happening on the track.
The ceremonial thing, don't underestimate the strength of that. That last post that we've done now for, I think it's 3 seasons, is absolutely haunting. And how cool was it that a plane flew over just as the national anthems were sort of cranking up? They're doing it very well out there right now.
And Josh, you're new to speedway racing at Ruapuna. Your commentaries come on beautifully. What did you make of your first taste of Speed Week?
Yeah, I think Speed Week was definitely a fitting conclusion to what has been an absolutely fantastic season here at Ruapuna Speedway. I think really the midgets, wingless sprints and TQs, as well as the sprint cars, of course, as usual, really put a real superstar field on Ruapuna Speedway all weekend. We had, of course, the 2 Americans, and Joel Myers and Jonathan Allard in the sprint cars, and Marcus Dumsey joining them as well. But so many great opportunities for the North Highland drivers to capitalise and to come down here, have some fun, and go back up all relinquished. And I think one kind of key note that we could take from this is Michael Pickers is going to come back stronger next year. He has really not had probably the best season that he would have liked, and of course Joel Myers really kind of had what we'd kind of classes as a Michael Pickens-esque season, winning a lot of titles in his own. Of course, they're taking the 1NZ Sprint Car Championship out, and Gold Cup, the King of Cromwell, etc. So I think there's going to be a real fight on for next season between Pickens, Myers, Allard, those kind of drivers. So I think this Speedway kind of led on to what is going to be an exciting season for next year.
Yeah, well, certainly lots to look out for. And just a side note too, we've got the likes of Dylan Forsey and Caleb Bourne travelling to America in the off-season now to learn a bit more about their craft, mostly crewing for some pretty big names over in America. That's only going to play well. We haven't mentioned Dylan Forsey. How good's that kid as a sprint car driver at the moment?
Yeah, he's very good. And just on Caleb Bourne, I think as the year built up, some of the off-track sort of distractions sort of got out of their way trackside for him, and he came on strong towards the end. I made some notes about some of the stars of the future, and you look at the TQs, Ethan Smith, what a performance from Ethan in the TQs. Liam Astle in the modified sprint, how good was that? And in the midgets, Ben Morgan, Dylan Forsey, obviously in the sprint cars, what a talent. And then you start looking at the wingless, and those battles that we had there with the likes of Bailey, Clive and Kane Jemmett, some of them were superb. So every class now has stepped up, and there's some real superstars and ones that, some new names that are starting to spring to the fore, and that is just so good for the future of the place.
Well, I think Ruapuna is in great shape at the moment, folks. Speedway looks like it's here to stay. The midget eliminator looks like it's here to stay. Last man standing, well, we tried that. Big failure on that one, so that's probably not going to happen. But certainly Ruapuna is prepared to try new adventurous formats, and for the most part, they've got it right this year. I would say Ruapuna could class it as a very successful season. Certainly lots of big relationships formed up with some pretty good sprint car and midget teams from the North Island, and even the V6 wingless sprints. So look folks, we're all in good shape, and that is the last part of our show for the year. It's been my pleasure to bring it to you. My thanks to AJ Batt, Louise Smith, Josh Henderson, Michael Ransby for hitting the keys behind the scenes, and until next time, keep your foot up it.